Hello and welcome back to English Unlimited Podcast, the place where we break down English for you, taking the struggle and complexity out of achieving fluency. I'm your host, Charlie.
And I'm Jamie. Good to see you, everyone. We are here ready to dive deep into the source material that you've sent us, focusing today on, well, one of the most critical and, let's be honest, stress-inducing moments in a new language.
Oh, absolutely. And you know that moment, that instant panic when you have to introduce yourself, it happens everywhere. You walk into a new class or you're sitting down for a crucial job interview, even just meeting someone at a party. We think we know the words, right? Like student, manager, hobby, but putting it all together, making that perfect, clear grammatical structure and landing the right tone, it just feels like a persistent, nagging grammatical hurdle.
It truly is. It's that exact moment where all the grammar rules you've learned suddenly collide with social pressure. And that's precisely where intermediate learners, B1 learners, often freeze up. They start worrying about these foundational errors, like suddenly realizing that saying something simple like, I agree, is just fundamentally wrong.
Yes. Or trying to explain how long you've worked somewhere and completely mixing up the difference between for and since.
Exactly. Those little mistakes, they just break the flow and can really shatter your confidence.
So today, we are going to demystify the entire self-introduction process. We're going to tackle the essential blueprints. We'll dissect the must-know grammar rules you just can't skip, like that tiny little S on verbs. And most importantly, we'll explore the conversational phrases you need to keep the chat rolling smoothly after the introduction is actually over.
And we'll be going far beyond just the basics. We're diving into some really high-impact vocabulary like swamped and rewarding. We'll even explain the difference between a main verb and its helper, the auxiliary verb. It's a deep look at language mechanics, so stick around because we will have a pop quiz on that tricky difference between for and since later in our deep dive.
This is going to be the master guide you need. Okay, let's get into it. But first, before we dive into context and tone, if you find this deep dive helpful, please subscribe to English Unlimited Podcast and hit that like button right now. We love bringing you these extensive guides, and we really do appreciate your support.
We really do.
Okay, so looking at the source material, the very first thing it talks about, even before grammar, is this foundation. Context and tone. Why start there? I would have thought grammar would be step one.
That's a fantastic question, and it really gets to the heart of what communication actually is. Grammar is the engine of the car, no doubt.
Yeah.
But context and tone, they're the roadmap and the driver.
Ah, okay, I see.
You could have a perfectly tuned engine, but if you drive, say, a race car to a funeral, you're still getting it wrong. The sources are really clear on this. An effective introduction depends entirely on the context, so where you are and the tone how you speak.
So what you're saying is a really fluent speaker is constantly adapting their language. They're thinking about who they're talking to, what the goal is, and I guess how formal the situation is.
Precisely. And that ability to adapt is one of the clearest signs of real linguistic maturity. A B1 learner might know the rules, but a B2 learner knows when to bend them or even break them, depending on the situation. You just have to know when you need that formal, polished language, high-stakes settings like a job interview, versus when you can use casual, relaxed language with friends or coworkers you know well.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about that analogy the sources use to explain this. The two wardrobes.
Yes. The two wardrobes, it's such a great way to visualize this. It helps you categorize your speech patterns almost instantly. So first, you have your formal wardrobe.
The fancy suit.
Exactly. Imagine an impeccably tailored, structured suit. When you're wearing this metaphorical suit, your language is polished, you avoid all contractions, and you use complete, proper sentences. This is for any professional or unfamiliar setting.
Right, like saying, "Good morning, my name is David Chen. It is a pleasure to meet you."
Everything is fully pronounced, very professional, no shortcuts.
Exactly. Now, on the other end, you have your casual wardrobe.
My favorite jeans.
Your most comfortable pair of jeans and a t-shirt. When you're dressed like this, you're relaxed. Contractions are not just allowed, they're encouraged. The vocabulary is simpler, more direct.
So that's where you get the much friendlier, "Hi, I'm Alex. Nice to meet you."
Much quicker, much more relaxed. And if we compare them side by side, the formal setting really demands the full phrase, "It is a pleasure to meet you." The informal setting allows, and really it expects, contractions like "I'm" and the simple "nice to meet you."
And the difference might seem small, but if you say "I am" in a casual chat where everyone else is saying "I'm," you can sound a little stiff, a bit unnatural. Totally. It's a subtle signal, but it's a powerful one.
Okay, let's make this more concrete. A real-world scenario. When is that formality absolutely non-negotiable, and when can we relax a bit, even at work?
Formality is mandatory when the stakes are high, when the person you're talking to has authority, or when they're a complete stranger in a professional context. Imagine meeting a huge potential new client for the very first time.
Right, first impressions.
You have to start with full respect and structure. Hello, I am Dr. Lee, the head researcher. I am pleased to be meeting with you today. No shortcuts there.
Very structured. It sets a professional tone immediately. But, and this is a great point from the sources, not all professional talk has to be that stiff.
Yeah.
This is a big thing for B1 learners who sometimes over-formalize everything.
That is the key nuance. If you're
Yeah.
talking to a coworker you've known for 5 years, or even your own manager who has a really informal style, casual language might be not just acceptable, but expected.
You have to read the room.
You have to read the room. If they start the conversation with, "Hey, what's up?" you follow their lead. The goal is something linguists call linguistic mirroring. You take your cues from the people around you. You don't just rigidly stick to a formal script if the environment is relaxed.
So if my boss, who I know well, says, "What's up? Got a minute?" and I reply, "Good afternoon, esteemed supervisor. I trust your morning has been satisfactory."
You'd sound like a robot, or like you were reading from a very, very old etiquette manual.
Right. I'm basically showing I don't get the social context.
Exactly. So the main principle is adaptability. Context dictates your grammar, and your tone dictates your word choice.
Okay, foundation is set. We know who we're talking to. Now for the actual words. The substance, starting with name, age, and location. This seems like the simplest part, but I feel like this is where those little language transfer mistakes start to creep in.
It might look simple, but it relies almost entirely on mastering one fundamental, absolutely essential verb, the verb to be.
And you see it everywhere in those intro phrases. I'm from London, or I was born and raised in Toronto. It seems like everything about your identity is attached to that verb to be. It's the core connector.
Let's really focus on to be for a moment, because it's so important. It's fundamental for your identity, your location, your age, your status. It is, and this is a great analogy, the spine of the English sentence when you're talking about who you are.
I like that image, the spine.
Think about it. Everything about who you are, your name, your age, where you're from, if you're married or single, all of that information attaches to that spine. If the spine is broken, if you get the verb to be wrong, the whole identity statement just collapses.
Okay, let's talk about one of the weird rules with it then, the negative contraction.
Yeah.
The sources highlight this as a major red flag for learners.
This is crucial for sounding natural. English loves contractions for negative forms, right? She is not becomes she isn't. You are not becomes you aren't. But there's a unique, and I mean a very weird exception for the first person singular. I am not.
And what's the mistake that learners often make? They try to invent a word.
They try to follow the pattern, and they create I amn't.
I've heard that one before.
And that construction, it simply does not exist in standard English. You can't use it. It is an immediate marker of a non-native speaker.
So the only acceptable contraction for I am not is?
I'm not. That's it. You have to avoid I amn't at all costs. It's a tiny detail, but it's one that trips up even more advanced speakers sometimes.
Now let's hit that huge language transfer error you mentioned. The one common among speakers of Romance, languages like Spanish or Portuguese.
Yes. This is maybe the most common foundational mistake we see. In languages like Spanish, they use the verb that translates to have when stating their age. So they might say something that literally means I have 25 years.
Which makes perfect sense in their language structure.
Absolutely. But in English, we always use the verb to be for age. Always.
Why is that?
Because in English, age is seen as a state of being. It's a descriptive attribute of who you are right now. So you must say, I am 25 years old, not I have 25 years. This is a fundamental difference that you just have to drill and practice until I am becomes automatic.
So the practical exercise for you listening is to just drill that simple structure over and over. I am name, I am age years old, I am status, I'm from place.
Exactly. Subject plus verb to be plus complement. Mastering that simple fixed structure is probably the most important first step in making your identity statements clear.
Okay, speaking of structures, the source material brings up a technical term here that's vital for asking questions, but it often confuses learners. The auxiliary verb.
Yes. This is a perfect place for a deep dive because understanding this explains why English questions sound the way they do. An auxiliary verb or a helper verb is often, Well, it's invisible in a simple positive sentence, but it appears kind of like a structural skeleton whenever we need to ask a question or make a negative sentence.
Okay, so what's the simple way to define it? How is it different from a main verb, like eat or run?
A main verb shows the action or the state. Eat, run, think. The auxiliary verb, words like do, does, did, have, has, be, is, was it supports the main verb. Its whole job is to help express tense or voice or mood. Think of it like a grammar assistant.
So it's the quiet partner that only jumps in when the main verb needs help making a question or a negative.
That's a brilliant way to put it. For instance, if I say, I work here, the main verb is work. But if I want to ask a question, I need help. I need the auxiliary do you work here? The auxiliary just pops up to do the heavy lifting of building the question structure.
And the most common mistake is either forgetting it completely or putting it in the wrong place. I hear learners use their own language's word order all the time.
And that's where the confusion comes from. The rule in English is that the auxiliary verb usually jumps ahead of the subject in most questions. Let's run through a few examples just to see how it works in different contexts.
Yeah, give us a range of examples to really lock it in.
Okay, let's look at how it handles tense and formality. 1, a formal example in the past tense. The CEO did not attend the formal inquiry. Here, did is the auxiliary helping the main verb attend show both the past and the negative.
Got it.
2, a casual example. Do you want to grab coffee later? Simple. Do is the auxiliary before the subject, you. 3, a funny, weird example. My dog does not understand the difference between a toy and my shoe. Does is the auxiliary that agrees with the third-person subject, my dog.
Okay, that makes sense.
For a historical example, just for context. Before the 17th century, English sentence structures did not always require the auxiliary do for questions. You can see how essential it became. And finally, 5, a philosophical example. What does it truly mean to exist? Is there supporting the main verb mean?
That really covers it. So let's go back to the word order mistake. Let's say I want to ask you about your day. I might incorrectly say you are going to the store, just with my voice going up.
Exactly. And while people might understand you grammatically, you are going to the store is a statement. To be correct, especially in writing, you have to let that auxiliary verb are jump to the front before the subject, you.
So the rule is the auxiliary verb jumps ahead of the subject in a question.
It dictates the entire structure. So you have to say, are you going to the store? The auxiliary comes before the subject, you. This rule is so consistent. If we use do as the auxiliary, same pattern, what do you do? The auxiliary do is right after the question word, what, and before the subject, you.
So the formula, the necessary structure for almost all open questions is question word plus auxiliary verb plus subject plus main verb. If I forget that, I've broken the pattern.
You've broken the fundamental question pattern of English. We even see it with the past tense auxiliary did. If I want to ask about yesterday, where did you go yesterday? And notice this is another key detail for learners. Once you use did, the main verb go stays in its base form. You don't say did you went. The auxiliary did handles the tense for the whole sentence.
That clarity is so important. So what are some common phrases or pairings we hear with auxiliary verb?
Well, you often hear people talk about the auxiliary verb do, or you might look up a list of auxiliary verbs. We talk about using auxiliary verbs for negation, and also the modal auxiliary verb, which includes words like can or should. The main nuance here is that even though it sounds technical, you can't escape it. Mastering the auxiliary verb is the key that unlocks almost every correct negative and interrogative sentence in English.
All right, moving on from who we are to what we do. Talking about your job is so important for first impressions, especially in professional settings. The source material gives some great, clear phrases like, I work as a position at company, or I manage, I oversee.
And critically, when you're describing your job role or your daily duties, things that are habitual or long-term, you must use the simple present tense.
Okay, let's talk about the simple present and that tiny, sneaky, but absolutely essential rule, the day S rule. This is where so many learners slip up.
It's an area where even very fluent speakers can sometimes make a mistake just out of carelessness. So the simple present is for habits, general truths, and unchanging situations, like your job. For I, you, we, they, it's easy. You just use the base form of the verb. I teach, they study, no problem.
But the second we start talking about a single person who isn't me, or you, he, she, or it, the rule changes. And it's a mandatory change.
Correct. The core rule is that the third-person singular verb requires that crucial S, or sometimes EES or EC. So she understands English, or he works in healthcare. If you forget that S, it just sounds wrong to a native speaker.
I remember the analogy from the sources for this one. It's a great way to make it stick.
It is, yes. We call it the S tax.
ES tax.
The S is the small tax you must pay every time you use the pronouns he, she, or it. If you forget to add the tax to the verb, the sentence sounds incomplete. You have to pay the S tax.
Okay, let's try a real-world scenario to practice paying our taxes.
Perfect. Compare these two statements, just focusing on the verb. I work in the accounting department. No tax needed for I. Now, how would you talk about your colleague, Maria?
Okay, so Maria is she, so I have to pay the tax. Maria works in the accounting department.
Perfect. Now, what about those tricky endings? Most verbs just add an S, but what about a verb that ends in Y, like study?
If it's a consonant before the Y changes to an I and you add EES. So the student studies very hard.
Excellent. And for verbs that end in sounds like ESS-esh or
You add EE to make it easier to say, like catch or miss. So she catches the bus and he misses his family.
That's the level of detail B1 learners really need to master. The simple present looks easy, but applying that ES rule correctly and consistently is fundamental.
All right, let's move on to a really critical high-frequency error. This happens all the time when people talk about their job experience or how long they've been studying. For versus since.
Oh, this one is almost a guaranteed point of confusion for every single learner. The distinction has to be crystal clear. For is about duration, a length of time. Since is about a specific starting point in the past.
The analogy for this one was really good, too.
Let's use the road trip analogy. For is like measuring the road, the total distance you've traveled. I have worked here for 5 years. You're measuring the total length of your journey. Since, on the other hand, is the starting line of that road trip, a specific point. I have worked here since 2018.
Okay, so if I started my job in 2020, I would say I've been working here since 2020.
That is correct.
Right.
But if you want to state the total length of time, which is, what, 4 years now?
Then I have to switch to 4.
Mm.
I've been working here for 4 years. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now let's focus on the common mistakes. The things that learners say that sound right to them, but are completely wrong.
The most common error is mixing up since with a duration. For example, hearing, I've lived here since 6 years.
Right. That's a direct mix.
It is. Since needs a specific time, like since I was a child or since last Tuesday, not a quantity of time. You have to use full with duration. I've lived here for 6 years.
And the other big one involves the word ago.
Yes. The phrase, I have worked here since 10 years ago, is grammatically incorrect. The combination since at ago is redundant. It doesn't work. If you're talking about the duration, again, you must use for, I have worked here for 10 years. Or if you want to use ago, you need to switch to the simple past tense. I started working here 10 years ago.
That's a massive difference. Past simple with ago, but present perfect with for or since.
And just one last little distinction for nuance. Let's quickly clarify the difference between for since and the word during.
How is during different?
For and since are tied to actions that continue up to now or are still relevant now. During Doug describes something that happened within a period of time, and that action is usually finished. It's always followed by a noun. For example, I read several books during my holiday. The reading happened inside the holiday period. You wouldn't use it to talk about your ongoing work experience.
Got it. Okay, let's shift to some of that high-impact vocabulary for describing professional life. If someone asks me how work is going, and I am incredibly busy, I don't want to just say I am busy. The sources recommend a much better, more expressive word, swamped.
A phenomenal word for intermediate learners to adopt. So in the spotlight, let's differentiate it. Swamped versus overwhelmed.
To me, overwhelmed feels a bit more emotional, like you're defeated by it all.
Exactly. Swamped gives you that intense, almost physical feeling of pressure. It comes from the image of a swamp, with water rising fast and just engulfing you in tasks. The definition is to be extremely busy or overwhelmed with work, usually suggesting a huge volume of urgent things coming at you.
And it sounds like the perfect professional but still casual way to say you're under pressure.
It is. Let's hear how it works in a few different settings. First, a formal example, maybe for refusing work. I regret I cannot take on any new duties this week. My calendar is completely swamped with regulatory reviews.
Very professional.
Second, a casual example. Sorry I was slow replying. I was totally swamped with emails all day. Third, a funny, weird example, using it literally. After the pipe burst, the basement was absolutely swamped with water.
Okay.
Fourth, a historical example. When the borders opened, the immigration office was quickly swamped with applications. And finally, A philosophical example. In the modern world, we often feel constantly swamped by digital notifications.
That range really shows its intensity. Now, let's do an extended scenario. Two colleagues using this word naturally.
Okay, I'll be Sarah, and I'm clearly overworked. You can be Tom, the sympathetic coworker.
Sounds good. Hey, Sarah, good news. The manager just assigned us the new training project. We can finally get started.
Sighs. Oh, Tom, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but honestly, I can't even think about that right now. I am completely swamped with these Q4 budgets.
Oh, man, that sounds rough. I see you haven't moved from your desk. You must be totally swamped. Maybe you should ask the manager if someone else can take on the first part of that training project.
I know I should, but my inbox has like 400 unread messages. If I take on one more thing, I think I'll actually start sinking. I'm just so swamped.
You sound like you're about to sink.
Yeah.
That is the definition of swamped. Seriously, don't even look at the new project until next week.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I am definitely too swamped to think about anything else.
That word just perfectly conveys that high-pressure work feeling. So what are the common pairings and usage subtleties for swamped?
You'll commonly hear to be swamped with emails, totally swamped, feeling swamped, swamped by data, and swamped at work. The real nuance is that this is the perfect, professional, casual way to politely say no to more work or explain why you're stressed without having to give too much detail. It's polite shorthand for, I'm at my absolute limit.
That scenario naturally brought up our next phrase, which is a crucial phrasal verb, take on. This is so essential for talking about work, responsibility, and commitment.
Let's put take on in the spotlight. How is take on different from just say handle or do?
Well, if I handle a project, it sounds like I'm already managing it. But take on seems to emphasize the acceptance. The moment you agree to a new responsibility that wasn't yours before.
That distinction is key. The definition of take on is to accept a responsibility, challenge, or piece of work. And it often implies that this new work is difficult or extra. It signals your commitment to accepting that new burden.
Let's run through a range of examples to show that feeling of acceptance.
Okay. 1. Formal. The lead engineer was hesitant to take on the new government contract due to the tight deadline. 2. Casual. I can't believe they asked me to take on another shift this weekend. I'm already exhausted. 3. Funny weird. My neighbor decided to take on the responsibility of caring for a runaway flock of goats.
That's okay.
4. Historical. The new administration had to take on the difficult task of rebuilding the economy. And 5. Philosophical. To mature is to decide which responsibilities one can ethically take on and which must be declined.
The meaning always carries that weight of acceptance and commitment. Let's do another extended role play, this time about high-level delegation.
Okay, I'll be the manager, and I'm asking you, my capable but very busy employee, to take on a critical project because the current manager is burned out. Thanks for joining this call. We have a crisis with the Alpha project. David is completely burned out and needs to take time off. We need someone highly reliable to take on his role, effective immediately.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear about David. That project is massive, and honestly, I'm still quite swamped myself. Are you asking me to take on the entire project leadership?
Ideally, yes. I need someone willing to take on that leadership role and assume full control. It's a huge commitment, but if you successfully take on this challenge, it will be a defining moment for your career.
I understand the importance, and I want to help. But if I take on all of that, I won't be able to meet my current deadlines. Can we find a junior analyst to take on the documentation part?
That's a reasonable compromise. Okay, you take on the technical and creative direction, and I'll find someone to take on the documentation. Can you commit to that?
If I can dedicate most of my time to it for the next month, then yes, I can take on that part of the work.
Fantastic. I really appreciate your willingness to take on such a difficult challenge right now.
That dialogue just perfectly shows that crucial moment of acceptance. Now, what are the frequent pairings and subtleties for take on?
We often hear, take on a client, take on too much, take on responsibility, reluctant to take on, and willing to take on. The key subtlety is that this is the primary phrase in business for talking about delegation and workload. It's used much more often than just accept, because it implies you're accepting a challenge or a burden.
We've covered identity, our job, and how long we've been doing it. The next crucial step in a good introduction is the personal touch, hobbies and interests. This is what builds rapport and makes you memorable.
It absolutely does. It shifts the conversation from facts to enjoyment. And the structure for expressing this is pretty simple but important. I like enjoy love, plus the gerund form, or the more casual I'm into, plus a noun or gerund.
And the source material gave us some great categories for hobby vocabulary that go beyond just reading or sports.
Yes, we organize them by the type of activity. For creative activities, we use action verbs like drawing, pottery, or knitting. For intellectual pursuits, we use nouns about learning, like genealogy, philosophy, or astronomy. And for sports, we can be more specific, contrasting individual sports like running versus team sports like basketball. Choosing a more precise word just makes your introduction richer.
And if we want to sound truly enthusiastic, saying "I like" can be a little flat. The sources highly recommend the phrases "to be into" or "get into." Let's talk about why those are better.
Okay, in the spotlight. To be into versus to have an interest in. To have an interest in is perfectly correct, but it sounds formal, a bit distant. To be into is dynamic, it's conversational, and it signals real enthusiasm and active involvement.
So the definition is to be keenly interested in something. And "get into" means you started enjoying it recently.
Precisely. Let's illustrate that dynamic feeling with a few scenarios. One, formal, maybe explaining a career change. Although I was initially into financial modeling, I've been getting into the ethical applications of AI recently. Two, casual, with a friend. Are you still really into collecting vinyl records?
Okay.
Three, funny weird. After watching one documentary, my dad suddenly got really into competitive cheese rolling. Four, historical. During the 1960s, a lot of young people became heavily into folk music and protest culture. And five, philosophical. It's common to find people who are deeply into minimalism seeking to simplify their lives.
That definitely conveys more passion than just like, it shows you're actively involved. Let's do an extended role play about starting a new hobby.
I'll start. Hey, I saw you were reading that book on ancient history. I didn't know you were so deeply into that topic.
I wasn't until recently. I just started to get into it after a trip to Rome. I found the story so fascinating. What about you? How did you first get into rock climbing?
I was always hiking, but I only really got into the serious technical climbing side about 2 years ago. I find it so rewarding, even though the training can be a real hurdle some days. What is it about history that you're so into?
It's the ability to demystify the present by understanding the past. I find that mental puzzle incredibly rewarding. It gives me a new perspective.
It sounds like you're really into activities that demand a lot of mental effort.
You're right. If I'm truly into something, it usually has to challenge me.
Now, for common pairings with to get into,
Yeah.
you hear really into, just getting into, what are you into, and not really into. The key nuance is that this is essential, dynamic phrasing for any casual conversation. It signals enthusiasm and invites follow-up questions.
We use the word rewarding a few times there. That's another high-impact adjective from the sources. And it's so much better than just saying a job or hobby is good.
Absolutely. So, in the spotlight, rewarding versus fulfilling. Both are positive, but fulfilling suggests something meets a deep personal need. Rewarding implies there was a payoff after some effort. It signals achievement.
So the definition is giving satisfaction because you've done something important, difficult, or beneficial. It carries the idea that the result was worth the struggle.
Let's show that connection between difficulty and payoff with some examples. One, formal. Launching the nonprofit was challenging, but it proved to be an immensely rewarding experience for the team. Two, casual. That huge garden project took all weekend, but looking at it now is so rewarding.
Totally.
Three, funny weird. Finally teaching my cat to high five was surprisingly rewarding. Four, historical. The work of early polar explorers was dangerous but historically rewarding due to their discoveries. And five, philosophical. Many find that service to others is ultimately more rewarding than the pursuit of personal gain.
That really establishes that link between effort and positive outcome. Let's extend that conversation about a challenging hobby, like training for a marathon. I honestly feel like quitting my marathon training, getting up at 5 a.m. is just brutal.
I totally get that, but focus on the mental benefit. Wasn't finishing your last long training run really rewarding? The effort you put in makes the achievement feel so much better than if it were easy.
It did feel amazing,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure I can take on the full commitment this time.
You can. The initial exhaustion is the biggest hurdle. If you get past that, the feeling of crossing the finish line is what makes the whole thing so personally rewarding.
You're right. The struggle is what made the payoff so rewarding last time. Okay, I'll stick with it.
Good. So the common pairings are highly rewarding, a rewarding experience, personally rewarding, financially rewarding, and to find a job rewarding. The nuance is you use this word to show deep value that came from overcoming a struggle, not just to say you had a good time.
We've now introduced two more fantastic words that describe the learning process itself. hurdle, and demystify. Let's give them the deep dive they deserve, since they're perfect for talking about learning a language.
Okay, hurdle in the spotlight. Hurdle versus barrier. A barrier is often a static, large thing that just blocks you. A wall. A hurdle, however, is something on a path that is designed to be jumped over. It suggests motion, effort, and that you can get past it if you try.
So a barrier stops you, but a hurdle is a challenge you have to actively clear to keep going.
Precisely. The definition is a difficulty or problem that must be overcome, and it implies positive effort and persistence.
Let's see this word in action.
1. Formal. The lack of reliable data was the major hurdle in completing the analysis. 2. Casual. The biggest hurdle in cooking Thanksgiving dinner was just timing everything correctly. Really funny, weird. My only hurdle with this new smart fridge is stopping it from ordering more cheese.
I want that fridge.
4. Historical. A key technological hurdle for early aviation was creating a lightweight engine. And 5. Philosophical. If we reframe a problem as a temporary hurdle, does that enhance our resilience?
I think the biggest hurdle for English learners is often pronunciation, or maybe specific grammar points like phrasal verbs.
It often is. Let's run a scenario about those exact learning challenges. You seem to be doing really well with your language studies now. Thinking back, what was the biggest hurdle you had to overcome at the start?
Honestly, the grammar rules were a constant hurdle. I could memorize words, but understanding when to use an auxiliary verb felt like I was always hitting a wall.
Yeah.
Is a huge structural hurdle for me.
That's a very common experience. For many, another hurdle is mastering irregular verbs or differentiating between similar prepositions.
Definitely. But once you finally overcome that hurdle, the feeling must be so rewarding.
It is. The common pairings are overcome a hurdle, the final hurdle, a major hurdle, and to jump the hurdle. The key nuance is that it implies a challenge that is surmountable with effort.
And the other word, demystify, is exactly what we're trying to do in this deep dive.
I love this word for any educational context. So in the spotlight, demystify versus simplify. When you simplify something, you might reduce its complexity, maybe even lose some detail. But when you demystify it, you remove the aura of mystery or the confusing jargon around it, making it clear without losing the depth.
The definition is to make a complicated or confusing subject clear and easy to understand. It has a really powerful professional feel.
Let's showcase its use in providing clarity. 1. Formal. The purpose of this training is to demystify the new regulatory process. 2. Casual. Can you please demystify this recipe for me? It uses too many technical cooking terms.
I've said that before.
3. Funny weird. The magician refused to demystify how he made the elephant disappear. 4. Historical. The work of scientists like Galileo helped to demystify the laws of the universe.
Yeah.
And 5. Philosophical. The goal of critical thinking is to demystify political rhetoric and find the facts.
Fantastic range. Let's do a role play between a teacher and a student. As the teacher. All right, today we are tackling conditional sentences. I know they seem complicated, but our goal is to completely demystify the logic behind them.
As the student. Oh, thank goodness. I tried to study them last week, but the grammar terminology felt like a huge hurdle. I just couldn't get it.
That's why we're going to demystify the jargon. Instead of focusing on technical names, we'll focus on the simple idea. For example, the third conditional is just about an impossible past regret. Once you see that simple function, it's easier to take on the structure.
So focusing on the simple function helps demystify the complicated rules. That makes it feel much more manageable.
Exactly. We succeed as teachers if we can demystify the learning process for you.
The common pairings here are to demystify the process, demystify the jargon, an effort to demystify, and to demystify complex systems. The nuance is that it's a highly professional word that signals you're providing superior clarity on a confusing topic.
Okay, we've spent a lot of time on the grammar and the words, the framework.
Yeah.
But the sources make a strong case that fluency isn't just about being correct, it's about the music of the language. Stress and intonation.
That is absolutely correct. If grammar is the framework of the house, then stress and intonation are the paint, the furniture, the rhythm of life inside it. English is a stress-timed language. That means some syllables are spoken very strongly and others are reduced and spoken very quickly. If you speak English with a flat, even rhythm, even with perfect grammar, it can sound unnatural.
So how does a learner actually do that stress? It's more than just speaking louder, right?
It's much more. We need to focus on 3 things happening at the same time. This is critical for sounding natural.
Okay, first is volume.
The stressed syllable has to be distinctly louder than the syllables around it. It immediately tells the listener's ear what the most important word is.
Second is pitch.
The pitch, or the musical note of your voice, usually goes significantly higher on that stressed syllable. That change in pitch carries a lot of the emotional meaning.
And third, vowel quality.
You have to consciously make the vowel sound in the stressed syllable longer. If you rush it, it won't sound stressed, no matter how loud or high you make it. It's the combination of louder, higher, and longer that a native speaker hears as correct English stress.
And in any given sentence, there's usually one main stress point, right? The most important one.
That's what we call the tonic syllable. It gets the main emphasis for that whole chunk of speech. Learners have to practice locating it and then really stressing it, make it super obvious. In the phrase, "I work in accounting," the stress has to land there. If it doesn't, the word is hard to understand.
So knowing the grammar is only half the battle. We need a practical action plan for how to practice this rhythm on our own.
Absolutely. The sources recommend two key techniques. The first one is shadowing.
Can you explain the shadowing technique?
Shadowing is when you listen to a native speaker from a podcast, a video, anything clear, and you immediately repeat what they're saying almost at the same time. You're trying to mimic their exact rhythm, stress, and intonation. You're their audio shadow.
So this helps you build the physical muscle memory for English sounds without overthinking the rules.
Exactly. It trains your mouth and your ear together. The other mandatory tool is record and review. You use your phone or computer to record yourself doing your self-introduction. Then you listen back and you compare your rhythm and stress patterns to a native speaker's version.
That's the ultimate tool because it lets you hear your own mistakes. You can identify where your stress is wrong and you can correct it yourself.
The goal isn't just to know about intonation, it's to learn to control how you sound control the pitch, volume, and length. So the listener hears the music, not just the words.
All right, this is the part of the deep dive where we help everyone feel better by talking about common mistakes. I'm going to be the relatable learner and serve up some common but incorrect phrases.
And I'll provide the expert correction and explain why it's a mistake, which will help demystify the grammar rule.
Ready for mistake number 1? This happens all the time with hobbies. It's about a missing preposition. I like listening to music on weekends.
A classic mistake. It's a direct transfer from many other languages. The verb listen in English absolutely requires the preposition to connect to the object. You must say, "I like listening to music." The action listening always travels to the thing you're hearing.
Okay, mistake number 2. We hear this one constantly. It's about the verb agree. I am agree with your point of view.
Incorrect. The verb agree is a strong, independent main verb. It doesn't need any help from the auxiliary verb to be. Saying "I am agree" is grammatically the same as saying "I am think" or "I am work." It just doesn't make sense.
So the correct way is simply,
I agree with you. That's it. Subject plus main verb. Just drop the am.
got it. Mistake number 3. This is about confusing adverbs and adjectives. He smiles happy every morning.
The adverb-adjective swap. Remember, adjectives describe nouns or identity. A happy man. Adverbs describe verbs. They tell us how the action is done.
So since smiles is the verb, the action, I need the adverb.
Correct. You have to say, "He smiles happily every morning." Most adverbs in English have that handy "-ly ending to help you spot them.
Okay, and finally, mistake number 4. The one that causes so much pain. Irregular verb mix-ups, especially with the present perfect. She has drove this car for years.
That is incorrect. You've used the simple past form, which is drove, but the present perfect tense requires the past participle form.
And the past participle of drive is?
Driven. She has driven this car for years.
Mm-hmm.
For irregular verbs like drive, drove, driven, or write, wrote, written, there is no formula. You simply have to memorize the 3 forms because that third form, the past participle, is mandatory anytime you use have or has to form a perfect tense.
All right, you have been dissecting all of this so well today. I think it's time for a quick test for me and for everyone listening.
It's time for the pop quiz.
Okay, bring it on. I'm ready to overcome this final hurdle.
First question, testing our grammar on duration. When you're describing the length of time, say 3 years, do you use for or since?
Duration is the length of the journey, so you have to use for. Since is only for the specific starting point.
Correct. Next question, testing our vocabulary. If you are accepting a new, difficult piece of work, which phrasal verb is best? Handle or take on?
You should use take on because it specifically emphasizes that you're accepting a new responsibility or a new burden.
You nailed it. Last one. If you are teaching a complicated idea and you make it clear by removing all the confusing jargon, are you simplifying it or are you demystifying it?
You are demystifying it. because you're removing the mystery while keeping all the important details.
A perfect score. You have successfully demystified the entire process.
That feels incredibly rewarding. Let's quickly summarize the key takeaways for everyone listening.
Okay, we covered 3 top concepts today. 1, always adjust your language for the formal versus casual context. Use that 2 wardrobes analogy to help you choose. 2, master the duration difference. For is for the length of time, since is for the start point. Never use since with a duration. And 3, fluency requires practice with intonation, your pitch, volume, and vowel lengths, not just with grammar.
And our top 5 words learned today, which are essential for B1 fluency and beyond, are swamped, demystify, rewarding, take on, and hurdle. Start using these right away.
And now for your micro challenge. Your task is to end a conversation with someone today by saying, "It was nice chatting with you." And then in the comments below, use one of the high-impact words we deep dived into. Tell us if your day was swamped or rewarding. Tell us about the biggest hurdle you faced.
I love it. Use your new language immediately.
And here is our final provocative thought for you to think about. The greatest hurdle in English isn't just knowing the rules, it's using them. The next time you introduce yourself, don't just speak the words, control the music, and remember to pay the S tax.
Wise words. And don't forget to like and subscribe to English Unlimited Podcast.
It really does help us bring you more deep dives like this one.
I'm Charlie. See you next time.
And I'm Jamie. Bye.